It's a featured Friday segment, and we are happy to welcome on and say good morning in studio to the Governor of Missouri. Mike Parson is here with us on 95.7 FM. KCMO Talk Radio, as we are thrilled to have him in the KCMO Talk Radio studios. What do you got there, Gov? 40-some-odd days or so? I know you're not counting, but it's coming down the home stretch.
No, but actually it's less than that. It's much closer to 30 days than it is 40-some days.
I can tell you're not excited. Well, you're passing through the Kansas City area, obviously. You got a lot going on, and, you think about issue number one, just from a broad sports culture community, things that people are talking about here, and you and I have talked plenty about it. It's the Chiefs. It's the Royals. It's what their future is going to be in this town, in this state, in the region. How are you feeling as we get set for Christmas, the holidays, and, the final 30-some-odd days for you? Where are we right now?
Well, as far as with the Chiefs and the Royals and where they're going, the stadium and all of that, we're still working on that. Matter of fact, we're working on it as we speak today, to be right honest about it. But I do think what you're going to see, the listening audience, what you're going to see, I think you will see the Royals and the Chiefs divided. You will no more longer have what they call the Truman Sports Complex. I think you're going to see the Chiefs probably put a training facility in a very nearby location in Missouri, that there's a good opportunity for that to happen. So I think once you get the training facility in, then I think it becomes an issue, where do the Royals go? And that's something that's been undetermined at this point. But then I think it really comes down to a point, okay, do you want the Chiefs and Arrowhead to stay at Arrowhead or not? I think what the voters are going to face at some point. But this is kind of the way I see this thing starting to break down. And again, just trying to put those pieces together as much as I can before I leave.
So it sounds like the pieces with the Chiefs might come before the piece of the Royals, and it was always expected the Royals would have to figure out what they want to do first. But it sounds to me like the Chiefs might have their vision a little sooner and with a little more clarity.
I do, and it's not to take anything away from either club. They're both major league franchises, but I do think the Chiefs probably have a really good, solid plan in place of what they're wanting to do and what their vision is. I still think the Royals have got to figure out what that side is and when you're going to invest in it and what's that going to look like.
Have the Royals given you, I know you're heading out, but any idea in terms of what their next is?
We keep meeting with them and we keep talking to them, but I don't know yet that it's determined exactly where they're going to be. I don't think that decision has been made. So until that day comes, it's going to be very difficult to try to figure out what can you do for them until that day comes. And I know they're going to want something, but you can't, both these franchises, they've got a contract to 2031. So the reality of it is they're going to have to make a decision in the next year at most, even if they decide to go somewhere and build a new stadium. To get that done 4 or 5 years is definitely going to be a pretty big task to do. But hopefully common sense prevails here. I think good people can see that we want the Chiefs to stay in Missouri. Arrowhead's an icon, 60 years of that family tradition there. They're back to, 2 stadiums in the NFL. I guess probably Green Bay and the Chiefs. I don't think anybody wants to get rid of that. I think they want to keep that. I think Clark does and the family does. It's just a matter of the people in Kansas City and Jackson County is going to have to really come to a question and say, do we want to keep them or not? Not so much about the dollars behind it. It's just a question, are we willing to support it?
Do you think there's a state role in all this? And obviously that will be on Governor-elect Kehoe, but is there going to be a state element potentially?
Yeah, I think so. Look, Pete, that's nothing new to the state. We've been involved in the Royals and the Chiefs from the beginning. We've been involved with the St. Louis Blues, with the St. Louis Cardinals. All the things we've been involved in major sports. Look, there's one thing about Missouri, no matter what part of the state you're from, whether it's Kansas City, St. Louis, Southwest, wherever it is a very sports-generated state. Mm-hmm. And we like our sports in this state, and people are willing to support that. And they always have. And I think they will. I think you got to get some people in Jeff City to kind of come to grips with saying, hey, we're going to have to support this just like other states are doing, whether it's Tennessee or Minnesota or Buffalo or all the franchise, Jacksonville. We know that they bring a lot of revenue, and it's worth a great deal of value to have those professional teams in our state.
Well, how about on that front, the sports betting that passed razor-thin margin, how do you think the state can take advantage of that?
Yeah, I think that's going to be another tool. I think it'll be another tool in the toolbox. I think that was something, I'll be honest about it, what the numbers I was looking at earlier, I thought it would pass by a larger margin than what it did. But anyhow, it passed at the end of the day. And we're going to have to implement that and see how we can use those resources to help to invest in things like Major League Sports, to be able to do that, whether it's baseball, whether it's soccer, whether it's football. that's going to generate funding to the sports arena, so we might as well use it to help pay for the bill on some of that.
Governor Mike Parson is here on KCMO Talk Radio, joining us on 95.7 FM. Obviously, this has been a huge topic here in Kansas City, and I know it's something that you have talked about on this show, and that is what the future could be for former KCPD detective Eric DeValcanaire, whether or not it's a pardon, commuting the sentence. Where are you at on that right now?
Yeah, well, probably about the same place I was last time we talked. So first of all, there'll be decisions that'll be made before I get out. I mean, all governors always look at pardons and things like that towards the end of their term. Everything we'll be looking at that. But, what I don't want to do, Pete, is I don't want to give false hope for anybody in case something doesn't happen or something, So I haven't said much about any of the cases I'm looking at, what I might do or what I might not do. I think we do know. I think the governor coming in has already made a statement what he's going to do. So I think that is a little assurance for the families. But, again, we're in that process right now, and when that day comes, we'll know.
Do you expect to roll out potential pardons all in one day, or do you kind of stagger those? How would you do that?
Yeah, we'll look at that. We'll look at that. There's different levels of pardons that we do and different paroles versus a full pardon, what you might do. So there's different aspects of that. But, look, we're working on that right now. We had meetings on that today, last week, so we want to get that wrapped up, and we want to get some people some certainty of what the future looks like for a few people.
How do you weigh potential media attention with what also you think might be the right thing to do? How do you balance that when you're sitting there deciding what to do?
Yeah, I think one thing, you got to take the media equation out of the picture, because if you start making decisions by that, then that's not a very good basis to do that. I think, one, you go back and you look at the elements of the crime, what happened during that time, and what was the sentencing process with that, and how do you deal with that? What do you do if you put somebody on parole? What does that look like when he gets out? Mm-hmm. Is he a threat of any kind to society? Does he need to have monitoring? Does he need to have a home plan? All of these kind of things that we go through, we look at that, and then you look and see what the circumstance of the crime was. In the case you're talking about, we know that was unusual circumstances that doesn't happen every day. But I will say this, my job as governor, regardless what people say about those decisions I make, those are perfectly what the Constitution says for me to do. So, you get criticized sometimes by people for some of the comments I've made in this case or other cases I've had up here in Kansas City, but people up here do the same thing. Sometimes when they have the ability, the prosecutor and judges say, okay, we believe this guy's innocent, so we're going to let somebody out. Well, they're within the law to do that. But a pardon comes right down to the governors. That is my job to get to do at the end of my sessions. Every governor's did it. So I'm going to look at all those factors and see where I go from there.
Is there a part of that case, a fact in that case that's got you hung up either way that really has you kind of trying to question what the right move is?
Yeah, well, it's probably one of the most difficult cases I've ever
Is it really? Okay.
Look, I'm a law enforcement guy, 22 years,
mm-hmm.
And I know what it's like to be out there to wear the badge. I know what it's like when you have to make split-second decisions, And, so all of that weighs on you a little bit,
mm-hmm.
Especially you look at somebody like this officer, as far as I know, had an exemplary record,
mm-hmm.
And he served for like over 20 years to the general public. So you have to take all of those things in consideration and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to do that, what's that look like when you release somebody like that? Well, is he a threat to society? No, probably
mm-hmm.
not.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you need to know about him that's already been out there? You know about him? No.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's just that decision process that we'll go through. But again, I've been very careful, Pete, that I don't want to say one way or the other about a lot of these because, a lot of people think, okay, it's Christmas time. Well, maybe we're going to do a Christmas time. It really doesn't factor into it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. We'll
okay.
see. It's still on the table.
Yeah, Governor Mike Parson's here on KCMO now. Now, what we are going to do is just take a quick break with Governor Mike Parson here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. We'll come back with him, and we'll continue the conversation with the governor of Missouri, who is, of course, done coming up next month as the governor of this state. How does he leave it? What are his regrets? What does he feel his big successes are? And what is he handing off to his lieutenant governor and now governor-elect Mike Kehoe? We will get to all that more with Governor Mike Parson, who is joining us here on a Friday morning on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM for our featured Friday segment. What a great guest to have in the studios here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. I'm Pete Mundo. We are with Governor Mike Parson from the state of Missouri joining us on the show and joining us for a featured Friday segment here on KCMO 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Governor, you, of course, are heading out here in 30-some-odd days. And when you look at your legacy, a lot of the folks that you endorsed are going to be running Jeff City. Obviously, a prideful moment for you, but what does it say about where you think the state is at and what your legacy really is? Yeah,
well, first of all, I'm very proud of those selections. I mean, I don't think anywhere in our state's history has a governor ever picked 5 statewide office holders in their term. I don't know nationally that that's ever happened before, but I think one thing when you did that and you realize after the last election how much they all won by. And for me, just a point I'm in my career, that's the bench. That's the bench of tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I believe the Republican Party, those candidates, their conservative values will lead this state for many years to come. I do because, I mean, there's some very talented people I put in those positions. For the lieutenant governor you picked to take your place is pretty special.
Yeah.
The attorney general to win the way he won. As an unknown.
And he was getting looks at Mar-a-Lago. How about your AG coming out of nowhere? No one knew who the guy was until 2 years ago, and now Trump almost hired him for 2 things.
Yeah. I may choke him to death when I see him, too, if he just accept that. Because one of the things I told him, he's going to be AG for a while. But still, it was a great opportunity for him to go down there and meet with the president and to have the opportunity to be on a short list.
Were you surprised, or are you surprised by his rise, so to speak, of Attorney General Andrew Bailey?
Look, I think anytime you interview that young man and you realize where he's at in his life, where he is in his principles, where he is on his values, a military veteran, a smart young man that really is truly red, white, and blue. I mean, he bleeds it, and he has for his country, to be right honest about it. So, no, I wasn't surprised. I had the opportunity to work with him, and I mean, it's like this guy will be on the big stage at some point in his career, and I knew that all along.
The only thing I have wanted to say to Andrew Bailey is sometimes he's so smart, he's thinking 2 steps ahead of you, at least me. And I'm like, man, this is good, but slow it down for me here. I'm just a simpleton, He's good.
Well, he did that one time in a staff meeting. We're in there, we're talking about some legal issue, and he says, well, back in the Nixon case on such and such U.S. case versus U.S. such and such, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You don't even know who Nixon was, But he's pretty smart.
Well, let's go back. We were talking about this before going on the air. We started this show right around the time everything was going crazy in Jeff City, and you stepped in to replace the prior governor. How do you look back on the last 6.5 years, evaluate yourself, not just as a politician and as a governor with Governor Mike Parson, but also just as a person?
Yeah, it's a good way to lead into this when you said stepped in. Yeah, I stepped in, all right. Stepped into something. You know what? I look back on that time and my time in 6.5 years. I never wanted to be the governor of the state of Missouri. That was never in something I really wanted to do, other than one time I had an emotional lapse, I guess. But when I went in there, I knew that I felt like my first goal as being governor was putting stability back into our state and into our government from that position to try to figure out what is it people want. And then I also realized I didn't really make any commitments to anybody. I had a very unusual path that I just got to do what I thought was right for the state of Missouri. And I really thought, okay, I have this opportunity. I was put in this place because I definitely believe there's a purpose for everything that happens to us in life. And I got put in that place, and it says, okay, what do you want to do now that you're here? And there's no doubt that I decided I want to figure out how do you build the workforce of tomorrow? How do you build businesses in the state? How do you make sure kids in school are educated enough to know what they need to know to go to work? Not what everybody thinks they should know, but what is that really matters? And then the infrastructure side of it. Because if we could build the bridges, if we could build the highways, the airports, the train, the rail, and everything, the river ports, people would come to our state. And I've seen other states successful with that. So honestly, I set out on those 2 priorities. And I think just in my time, my lifetime of doing all the things I've done, I've realized a lot of politicians make a lot of promises to get into office, and they're going to do this and this and this and this. What I do understand is if you make everything a priority, nothing is a priority.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed with what it was originally and stayed with infrastructure, workforce development. And I will tell you, coming from a little old town of Wheatland, Missouri, how I grew up, my mom and dad sharecroppers, I used common sense. I used what I believed was the best for this country and for this state in all the decisions I made. I know that I didn't make the decision that made everybody happy all the time. But I think at the end of the day, when you look back on it, we kept our economy going, we kept people at work, and we tried to do the best we can to thread a very tough needle that we were trying to thread to get through that. And looking back on it, I think we did about what we needed to do in this state to move forward, and we have moved forward ever since.
What's the big thing you feel like you left on the table? Any big regret?
Yeah, we checked about every box that I think we set out to do. The biggest thing I think is daycare, because I think that hurts the everyday person as much as anybody. I think when you go look and see why people miss work is because of the lack of daycare in this state. And I'm not saying government should run that, because I don't think we're very good at running most anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there is ways we need to figure out how to get the private sector involved, how we might be able to share some of that responsibility. But I think daycare is the number one thing that affects everybody. It's not a political issue. It's just a matter of people going to work and staying to work and taking care of kids.
You got any big vacation plans when you get out of here in January? There's got to be somewhere you're going that's warm and sunny, unless it's Chiefs playoff football games.
Yeah, I'm here for the long haul for the Chiefs. I can tell you that. I'm not going anywhere till that's over. People ask me that all the time, what I'm going to do. I don't really have any plans. I'm going to not be in the political process anymore. But the simple things in life, I want to take a little 5-year-old granddaughter to school, like a normal person.
Yeah.
Without security, without all the things that we go through normally. For 69 years, I've worked every day of my life, it seems like, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it. But I want to feel like that first morning is I don't have to worry about that phone. I don't have to worry about something happening in the state and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to wake up that first morning and just see what it's like and just enjoy it a little bit.
Who's happier, you or your wife, Teresa?
There's no question. Teresa's definitely a happy camper, and she's ready to go home.
He is the outgoing governor of Missouri, Mike Parson. Of course, Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, his lieutenant governor, will take over. Governor, thank you for always being willing to come on the show the last few years, being a part of it, talking to this audience in Kansas City. And we wish you nothing but stress-free retirement over the next several years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate what you do every day up here, and go Chiefs.